Hi and welcome back to Grassroots Crypto, where I like to teach people about crypto. And in this video, I'm going to be giving my October update for THORChain. Did some previous ones here, and if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe and check out previous videos if you want to know more about THORChain, and that's a really good place to start right here. My tour of THORChain part 1 for beginners. Right, so in the video, doing an October update. We're going to be looking back on what has been happening, going through a few things looking forward, and then I want to give a bit of a RUJI and a Yieldi update. So looking back, the min swap fee has been changed. You would have seen that it's gone from 15 basis points down to 8 basis points. Perhaps what you didn't know is there's a function there, I think it's called like min swap floor or something like that, for all asset types. So whilst the layer 1 has an 8 basis points floor, the derived assets and synth assets have a still at 15 basis points, and trade accounts currently have a 5 basis points. And noting that's for an individual swap, not a double swap, because you've got to times it by 2. So for a layer 1 double swap Ethereum to Bitcoin, it's going to be 16 basis points because you've got 2 individual swaps, each charged at 8 basis points. So that's it there. The layer 1's down to 8 basis points, and there is now a floor or a setting, a Mimir setting for every asset type. When bridge assets come in, now known as secured assets, that will also have its own min swap fee. Max bond providers was increased from 10 to 100. That allows the community to add bond, and this is really going to be good for the smaller node operators, which is kind of really required to lift the lower parts of the bond. I'll explain that a little bit later, but that will allow more bond providers to have, you could say, community members with less amount of room in order to bond in and lift the overall bond of the network. And that overall bond of the network is required in order to secure all the assets when LPing is like it's going to become more attractive. We'll talk more about that in a minute, as well as having more of assets that it needs to secure, like it does for trade assets. It will have to do the same thing for secured assets and so on and so forth. So the amount of bonded needs to increase in order for THORChain to scale with all of this new app layer, increasing LPing, yielding, all that type of stuff that's going to occur. So it's really good to see. Ledger integration has been announced. Would have seen the tweet here. That has been announced. I think there's some updates to happen within Ledger Live. It's not 100% like today. However, it is happened. It's been, understand, years in the making. And it's going to be really good to be able to load up a Ledger app without having that under Ledger review thing happening. So really excited to see this big step forward. As I said, been worked on for quite an amount of years in order to get this to happen. The rune burn has started. So this is, we talked about in the last video, 1% of the system income being burnt. It's actually in every block. I had a look at the code, it's pretty cool. You can find a chart here of the total burn. This will include, this part here will include the 1%, but this burnt / killed includes the migration from BEP2 to native rune, as well as the lending burnt, and now also the system income burnt as well. So you can get a look at the total burnt here, as well as the total rune supply. So this is THORChain.net. It's had some updates, and it's going to become the preferred block explorer. So you can just like put all your transactions in here. It's seen at like pretty much near time. So as soon as you do a transaction, you can pop the transaction in here and it's seen straight away, which is so cool. So I'm using it a lot to have a look at all the different stats and stuff like that. It is looking really cool. So that has been happening in the background, and more changes are to come. There's like this really big document of feedback, and it's slowly been implemented, which is like, again, really cool. Okay, so I just want to run through the last ecosystem update. So here we have the ecosystem update produced by 9 Realms, a whole bunch of stats here, which is really cool. That was a good space. That has all the like the RUJI stuff as well. I just want to cover a few things here. So min swap fee, again, that was for L1 slip min, and as I said, there's now one for every asset type, and L1's just one asset type, and now that's down to 8 basis points for the L1. Then you have the system burn income, so we talked about that before, which is pretty cool. That happens every block. So 0.01% of system income gets burnt. Then we have Taproot support's been added. It's pretty cool. The disabling of synthetic swaps, so you can't swap between synths. You've got to use trade assets if you want to do that type of trading, and you can't mint new synths, you can only redeem. Noting that its synths have a 15 basis points swap fee now. That may change in the future. You just got to check the mirror for that, which you can do over here. And so if you're moving from synth to rune, it's going to be 15 basis points. If you're going from synth to L1, then that would be a 30 basis points because it's two swaps. It's a double swap. The max confirmation count has been capped. So if you would have seen my previous fees and wait time video, you would have seen like an example. If you have like 6 or 7 Bitcoin, you can be waiting like near 24 hours because of just the wait confirmation calculation. Now that's been capped, so it doesn't matter how much Bitcoin you send in, you're just going to be waiting like 3 blocks. And then we have some caps here for all the UTXO chains, as well as Ethereum actually, because that's not a UTXO chain, but the most you're going to wait is 14 blocks, which is pretty cool. It just makes like a better user experience. As I said in the last video, loans have been paused, so you can just exit out of loans. Just note, for derived assets, it's 15 basis points, and when you close a loan, it's 4 swaps. So that's, you know, minimum 60 basis points if you're closing a loan. That might change. Hopefully it will get lower into the future, so you're not paying 16 basis points, and that's not including the V pool difference. You can check out my videos on lending. So it could be a touch expensive at the moment to close a loan, so just do consider that and perhaps have a look at the fees before you go close a loan there. What to expect in the future, it talks about this like different chains to be implemented. Simplifying the base layer for the app layer. The app layer, we'll talk about that in a minute. Bridge assets, which has been renamed to secure assets, as well as we'll talk about the max bond provider increase. This auto bond did get approved, this ADR, but from last I heard, they wanted to wait until the incentive pendulums and a couple of other economic changes have been implemented, max bond providers update and all that, to shake out before they do more changes around this space. And then this part, which is kind of related to this scaling back of THORFi, this will reduce the leverage on pools, which will make things better for liquidity providers. So this, in addition to the increased system income and changes with the incentive pendulum, will start to move the liquidity provider experience back to where it was when the network first launched back in 2021. So things should get better with this and a couple of other changes that I talked about, addressing the points really that I talked about in my last video to get a better LPing experience and get better yields back for LPers. There's discussion around tweaking the outbound delay, and then that is about it for that one. So now looking forward, the incentive pendulum change has been actually merged. So that's this change here. It's complicated. It's a bit complicated. There's a lot of discussion there. You can have a read of the current incentive pendulum, and the difference between what's currently in place and what this describes, this docs here and this one, is going to be 3 different parameters in order to start tweaking the incentive pendulum. Like, the overall structure hasn't changed. I've made an MR for the actual docs, and the 3 particular mere settings or configurations are defined here. And in the most simple of terms, like this is probably a whole video by itself, is to say, well, how much bond are we going to consider? Are we going to consider the total effective bond or the security bond? And are we going to look at just the total pooled, or are we going to look at the vaulted liquidity? So how much, assets that are being secured and how much is going to be securing it. We can adjust the sizes on that, and that will start to change the split of system rewards. So you're sort of like tweaking the incentive pendulum in the way that you want it. And then there's another one there to dynamically adjust or contract the amount of assets that are being secured, which in old terms would be like the total pool. and then that would again either increase or decrease LP rewards, and that would be kind of like a substitute of the incentive curve that was in the previous edition of the incentive pendulum calculation before the current one was implemented. So again, it looks quite complex. Feel free to go through and have a look at this. These will be updated a little bit more. The main takeaway point is the incentive pendulum has been updated, and this should help the developers and the community tune the incentive pendulum in order to have a better and more attractive split of rewards for liquidity providers and node operators in a way that it was originally intended in the original white paper for THORChain. So also in the next release, bond providers that have above the minimum bond, which is 300,000 rune, like as a bond provider, can send a leave request. So that's this change here that's merged. That's going to be in the next release. You can see it there. That's allowing a bond provider to send a leave request, which will then put it in the leave queue for churning out into the next churn. It gives the bond provider a bit more power to kind of like force the node into standby, to leave the active node set in the next churn. So this is the next release. You can see all the merge requests that have been merged and kind of approved in the next release. And you've got the incentive pendulum here. You'd have the bond one here. And I'll go through just a couple of other ones of note. The stage net has been tweaked a bit so the RUJI people can set up their kind of like their own stage net for testing, which is again pretty cool. There's a lot of work happening there. So affiliate addresses will be added in the next release, and that will enable the affiliate to be paid out to two separate addresses. You can actually specify the affiliate amount and affiliate address twice inside of like an example, a swap memo or something like that. And there's a couple of other things here just to go ahead and update docs, tweak some things. You can look at them in your own time. The release after that is what people would be focusing and getting excited on, because this here will start to update the Cosmos version, and this is a prerequisite for enabling the app chain. So this is a really important change for THORChain. It's probably one of the biggest ones here. Then there's adding base. This is pretty cool. So this will be adding the L2 base chain. There's the upgrade handler. So I think Pluto talked about this in a previous space, where instead of having these consensus breaking changes needing to go offline for a couple of hours to do a hard fork, Cosmos enables you to do this without having to do it in the back end. So that's what that change is for. Then this one here enables the integration, well actually upgrades THORChain to use message send. I talked about this with a memo. I talked about this in the last video. And then it's part of the integration between the base layer as well as the app layer. And then here is the secured assets. This was bridged assets. It's been renamed now to secured assets. And this will replace eventually trade assets and then be used to move between. You can move between the base layer and the app layer, and they are compatible with all the things that they want to do with these particular asset types. And this is a perfect segue into doing my RUJI update. Firstly, I've got this little diagram here, and this kind of gives you an idea of what's coming with the RUJI and Levana being the perpetuals. It's a whole suite of functionality. And I also understand that liquid staking with liquid staking tokens and restaking and all of that also comes up with the RUJI package as well. So that's pretty cool. Heaps of functionality. Now, this is all used to work, well, it does work on the Kuji chain. Now, what needs to happen is that these layers need to be able to talk to each other now that this is running on the base layer. So you're going to have all the pools, and this is where the swapping kind of will happen, even though it's kind of like looks like it's here, and there's going to be these roll-ups to have these asset pairs. But essentially you need this integration to talk. So you need these bindings where the app layer can call and talk to the base layer and vice versa. So that's the way that the messaging's done, as well as having the controls. So we have all these halt or pause settings so that if they get triggered, that can happen at the app layer, and then some fine controls with what happens in the app layer as well. So like if there's a pull halt within the base layer. You want that to be able to influence what's happening in the app layer, because the app layer is going to be using the base layer in order to conduct the swaps, because that's where the liquidity is. So there's a GitHub with RUJI RS, and that contains a lot of the bindings that I understand is going to be within the smart contract to enable the integration between the THORChain base layer as well as the actual smart contracts, these things that are built on top in the app layer. Now, all of this is happening in the background, and that is dependent on this particular change before it can go live. And I understand this is looking at a November timeframe is the latest thing that I've seen this week. Either way, that's what's been happening within the Rajira space, as well as all the code like inbound IBC channels, as well as all the type of work to make this app layer live on this base layer. Lastly, Yieldi is something that's been floating around. I did see this in token, and it's starting to get some steam, and this is a way to provide yield on your Bitcoin. So we have the savings products, obviously that's been wound down. So the team, particularly JP, has been looking at different ways that you can introduce a savings product and give yield on Bitcoin in a safe and sustainable way. So Yieldi has a bunch of different ways to do that, and I just thought I'd show that this is underway. It's got some nice fancy diagrams talking about restaking, obviously with your liquid staking. AVS, which is just a different type of way of doing that, particularly with Bitcoin, as well as well, I talked about the yield collection module, splitting LP with from yield and doing all that type of stuff, the payments and these type of things. So if you want to check more out about Yieldi, check out the docs part here. Probably has a docs site, I just haven't seen it. And you can also check out their website, which is I think yieldi.xyz, as well as what's happening on the project status here. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, let me know in the comment section below. Let me know what you want to see more of, less of, whether you like the longer form updates or you want them short and brief. Don't forget to like and subscribe the video. And until next time, thanks. Bye.